Good morning, everyone. My name's Hitan Mehta, and I have the privilege of being the Executive Director at the British Asian Trust. The British Asian Trust is an organisation that is driven by the British Asian diaspora and His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales as our royal founding patron. We are supported by some of the most incredible people across the UK and South Asia, which enables us to make the most positive difference possible for poor and marginalised people across the region. To date, we've had a positive impact on the lives of 5 million people. At times like this, when there is a global pandemic affecting the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, our organisation is more important than ever. Last year, through our COVID-19 appeal for South Asia, we raised almost £1 million and were able to reach more than 150,000 people with emergency relief support and frontline services. We know that in the months and years ahead, the British Asian Trust will be needed to do more than ever as we seek to rebuild a successful post-COVID world. To help us with this, I'm delighted to say that we've secured a partnership with the UK government in which the government will match any donations, every single pound that we raise in March, April and May this year. It will be doubled by them so that we can enable us to continue reaching some of the most marginalised communities and people in South Asia. Since the COVID-19 pandemic began, the British Asian Trust has been running a series of high-level webinars called the BAT Insight Series, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you today to this particularly interesting session. In England, we have seen some of the restrictions start to lift, and the government's 4-step roadmap offering a somewhat normal way of life and a route map to that. The success of the vaccination program is one major factor. But after a year of the pandemic, people are re-examining and remaking every part of not only their lives, but their businesses as well. Today, I am delighted that we're being joined by Ashok Vaswani, Chief Executive Officer for Consumer Banking and Payments at Barclays, who will share some of his economic insights into what is happening in our world today. We at the British Asian Trust are extremely fortunate to have an amazing group of trustees, supporters and advisors. One of those is our good friend Alpesh Patel OBE, a long-standing supporter of the Trust and founding principal of Profinium Partners. He's also an author and a broadcaster. Alpesh has decades of experience as an investment professional and investment advisor to governments, private banks and investment funds. He's authored several investment books and is also a former visiting fellow in business at Corpus Christi College, Oxford University. I wish to thank both Alpesh and Ashok for joining us here today. Before I hand over to Alpesh to facilitate this discussion, just a couple of points. If you wish to ask questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A box and we'll pass them on to Alpesh, and time permitting, we'll get to them. This event is being recorded. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Alpesh Patel.
Thank you, and I'll start my video as well while we're at it. There we go. Thanks very much, Hitan, for that lovely introduction. And it's an absolute privilege to have this conversation with Ashok. And Ashok, I've got to thank you for making the time to do this as well. Let me just introduce Ashok to everybody here, and we've got a good amount of time as well to ask you about everything from COVID, Brexit, what's changing in the world of banking, markets, fintech, how Barclays is going to revolutionize all of those things, and also the philanthropic arm of activities such as what British Asian Trust do and how you've been supporting them as well. So let me do the intro. And the great thing about Zoom is I can cheat. I've got it in front of me, I confess, though I've read it about half a dozen times because it's so inspiring. So I really want people to pay attention to this. You're Chief Executive Officer of Consumer Banking and Payments, okay? And that's group-wide, not just the UK, but group-wide. And that means you're in charge of executing the plans for the group's consumer banking, private banking and payments businesses across Asia, UK, Europe and the US. So pretty much the world over. And we know consumer banking and payments are the massive growth areas that we expect to see. So exciting times for you, obviously, and for Barclays. Just to run through some of the other things, you were CEO of Barclays Bank UK, covering, of course, retail banking, wealth, business banking, Barclays card as well. And what I found interesting is you're also a member of the Barclays Executive Committee and a board member also for Pratham, a sort of a sister organization, British Asian Trust, again, helping in the area of philanthropy there as well. You've been a director of Lend a Hand and a number of other non-profit organizations focused on rural education in India, which is where you were, of course, born. You were schooled in India. You went to Bombay University and Sydenham College of Commerce and Economics. So there's no Eton, there's no Harrow, there's no Oxford, there's no Cambridge, and you're at the pretty much the pinnacle of Barclays worldwide. So we'll have to address that and some of the advice you might want to give others who are looking to get into finance. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Ashok to say a few words first before we do the Q&A, please, if I may. And Ashok, over to you, and thank you again for doing this, and especially because you're about to go to a rugby match, I suspect. I love the jersey.
Alpesh, so good to see you. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and I'm very, very excited about being with you and the broader group today. It would, words like unprecedented, never, black swan, all these words relating to the pandemic have now become honestly cliche, right? It's been an incredible year, and I think it's affected life at multiple levels. I think it's affected all of us in our family lives, and we can talk a little bit about that. I really worry a lot about mental health and what happens to my family, what happens to your family, what happens to all my colleagues at work and my friends and how they're dealing with it. Obviously, it's a big, big deal for businesses and the way the businesses have to adapt. But, above all, Alpesh, this is about human ingenuity and how nobody should ever think of betting against human ingenuity. Whether that human ingenuity is in medicine, whether that's in business, whether that's in persistence, whether that's in resilience, it is quite. I feel very warm and feel very good about human ingenuity. But thinking about everything that's happened, clearly, at least in the UK, the vaccine has been a phenomenal rollout, great success. Kudos to the government for having done it so brilliantly. Obviously, businesses took a massive hit, particularly in lockdown 1, slightly better in lockdown 2, a slight dip in lockdown 3. Now, this is very important. In lockdown 1, I think businesses were just not prepared. So if you look at payment volumes, for example, Alpesh, it was down like 47% year on year during lockdown 1. Lockdown 2 improved to about 27% down year on year. Consider it was a holiday period, but also consider lockdown 2 wasn't as severe as lockdown 1 or lockdown 3. Lockdown 3 dipped about 32%. So if you just said lockdown 1 to lockdown 3, minus 47 to minus 32, what happened that enabled the economy to recover even during lockdown? And really, that is all about the digitization of the economy, which of course we'll get into. Now, not lost on me is that you shouldn't look at the total of this. You should actually break this up by what happened to large corporates, who are obviously a little easier for them to kind of deal with this, and what happened to small businesses. And I think the small businesses have actually borne the pain of this. And everything that we can do to help small businesses recover out of this pandemic, I think is going to be absolutely critical. And I know Alpesh is sure to kind of talk a little bit about this. So human ingenuity, 2020 is going to go down in history as a remarkable year for not only the pandemic, but also digital inflection. And I think we should spend a little bit of time chatting about that. So lots to talk about, Alpesh. Let me throw it open and let's get into the conversation. All hard questions you answer, the easy ones are for me.
There are going to be, I'm afraid there's going to be one or two hard questions because we've got some from the audience. You might be getting some job applications as well. I'm going to come to that in a second as well. Look, let me start off with the area that I love. And I think this is how we might have first met when I was doing something on BBC Radio 4 Today program about Barclays stock price. And I think then we got talking. So let me start off with that part first. Then we'll get to helping small businesses, COVID, Brexit, innovation, fintech, all of those things which our audience wants to know about. Your stock price is up 100% since around October of last year. Now, I've got to declare an interest. I bought into banks such as yours when they were at those multi-year lows, because they were at like 1997 levels, so it was a no-brainer. However, you're in payments, you're in consumer banking. What can you do at Barclays in that fintech revolutionary space where we're seeing all these other challenger banks to get your price from where it is now at roughly 200-ish to where it was in, and I'm looking at it in 2007 when it was at 800. Can you, Ashok, quadruple that with all the innovation, all the technology that's coming out and the firepower Barclays has?
Yeah, so Alpesh, obviously, I'm not allowed to comment particularly on the stock price. And I think you would be the right person. And if folks on this call, if there's one thing you do take away, is please follow this man. You'll make a lot of money. As far as Barclays is concerned, I think, Alpesh, the big thing for us has been the strategy of being a universal bank, combining the investment banking side of the house with the consumer side of the house so that, sometimes one engine is down and sometimes the other engine is down. But when both engines are roaring, obviously the company does really, really well. And you would have seen in Q2, Q3 of last year, the consumer bank took a hit, but particularly the investment bank and the markets business was doing exceptionally well. That continued into Q4, and let's see what Q1 has to say. We are going to announce results pretty much at the end of the month. On the consumer side of the house, yes, we took Q2, Q3 results. A lot of that, Alpesh, you would know, technical accounting asked us to take a lot of the loss provisions up front. And so obviously we did that. But I think we've utilized the period of the pandemic, 8-9 months. If I feel proud about it, we've really utilized it to move the strategic agenda of the bank, of the consumer bank. We've been on this digitization journey and we've continued this digitization journey. And one of the things that we realized is e-commerce is important, but the digitization of commerce is important. No longer can digitization be only within your ecosystem. You've got to think of digitization across ecosystems. So for example, how do we partner up? Apple is a great partner of ours. When they bought a new phone, how do we actually tell everybody it's really, really easy to get a new phone? By the way, we can help you with the purchase. By the way, we can help you with financing. By the way, we can give you a receipt. By the way, we can automate returns and literally digitize that entire ecosystem. And I'm very excited about the digitization of commerce, which is so linked to our payments business, and that I think will take Barclays forward.
Well, let's stay on that theme then. The whole digitization, obviously in terms of what Barclays provides, but in terms of for businesses, especially at this difficult time because of COVID and Brexit, what advice would you say to those businesses? I mean, what are you seeing at the top of Barclays? Because you deal obviously with consumers, but because you deal with payments, you deal with businesses as well worldwide. What are there any things they're missing, things that they should know about, things that they should really be focused on and emphasizing, which will benefit them from your perspective?
So, Alpesh, I've come to believe that every single company will have to become at some level a financial services company. No company today can close its eyes to online trading, right? Whether you're in B2C or whether you're B2B, online trading is going to become essential. And if online trading is to become essential, at the very least, companies have to accept payments. They have to learn how to accept payments digitally. And that's where we can help by becoming the kind of plumbing which wires into the company. Now, what happened in the last 12 months? Very, very, very important, Alpesh. If you think about it, the large corporates, because they're already on that kind of some level of digital journey, for them to kind of switch and become, take much more of their business digitally was easier, not easy, but easier than small businesses. Even large corporates have to become very, very savvy as to how they fulfill the entire ecosystem of finding customers, helping them with the purchase, financing the purchase, settling for any returns and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Figuring out returns is a big deal, particularly for a B2C company, right? Returns is a big deal even if you're a B2B company. Now, in SMEs, what has become very clear is that SMEs realized that they had to go online, but they didn't really have the wherewithal to do it themselves. So they jumped onto existing ecosystems who own the last mile. So Alpesh, think about ordering food in, right? Today, if you're trying to order food in, even if you go to the local Turkish kebab restaurant in your neighborhood, they will normally guide you onto Deliveroo, right? And you do the ordering on Deliveroo and stuff like that. What has happened is that the people who have won out are the people who control the last mile. And SMEs have to figure out as to how they get some balance back in that kind of equation, right? So how do SMEs understand their customers better? How do SMEs tap into this nerve of shop local? And then how do SMEs fulfill is going to become very, very, very important.
And tell me with what the bank's doing, how are you reaching out to train up the SMEs? And this also relates to a question we had on things like cybersecurity, because you as a big player are not just in the ecosystem, obviously, to provide services, but actually to educate and grow the marketplace, empower the marketplace. What are some of the things you're doing, both on the consumer side against, we've seen a spike up in fraud and scams that people are suffering from. We've seen some of those great adverts from Barclays, which are trying to teach people the basics of the internet, but also with businesses. What are you doing to help those businesses, as I say, beyond just this providing services? Because I know you've got a personal philosophy of making sure you empower them, educate them, inform them, and help them grow as partners. So tell me some of the things, some of the initiatives you've got in that space.
Yeah. So Alpesh, obviously our core of our business is the allowing companies, particularly SMEs, to both take payments and make payments, right? And that's a pretty easy thing to do. You can go to our website and everything kind of happens quite digitally. But more important than that, we've tried to do a couple of things to help SMEs. Number one, if you go to our website, you get a list of a lot of webinars that we're doing. And these webinars range from everything, if you want to go digital, or how you navigate through Brexit, how do you start when you're exporting for the first time. Those webinars are the kind of feedback we've got, and the NPS scores on those webinars is fantastic. So that's what we're kind of doing ourselves. We know that's not going to be enough. So we are also helping, and we've tied up with other partners to help. Alpesh, one big deal, I think, for small businesses is tapping into this sentiment of being local. I think everybody's understood that, we must support local shops, small establishments, whether they be restaurants, florists, dry cleaners, whatever it may be, right? And so we've tied up with Nextdoor, for example. You would know, Alpesh, Nextdoor is a very famous Silicon Valley company. But we've tied up with Nextdoor to enable SMEs reach out to the customers in their kind of neighborhood. Another initiative is, you would obviously know of Sherry Coot. Sherry Coot has done a fabulous job, and huge kudos to Digital Boost. Digital Boost is a platform that brings together SMEs and brings together volunteers, right? To be able to give SMEs a digital boost, right? It is really fantastic work what Sherry and her team have done. Digital Boost is something I would really encourage people to go out to kind of learn from. You've got volunteers there who would help us. Of course, back home, Alpesh, our Digital Eagles program, I hope everybody has heard about that. We continue to go we continue to try to push our Digital Eagle program as much as possible, because it's just so fundamental. So there are lots of resources out there for SMEs, right from learning to actually having volunteers who can help you with a whole bunch of stuff. I think that the other point that you made around fraud and scams is very, very critical. And the one thing I'd like to leave with everybody is please, 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 there are simple things you can do. They're very simple things that you can do which can avoid fraud and scams. You, when you leave your home, don't leave the door unlocked. You, when you walk out of your car, lock your car. You keep the keys safely in your pocket. It's the same thing. Passwords are like your key, right? Unfortunately, we did research and 60%, 65% of people use either A, B, C, D, E, F or their date of birth. You don't need to do that. You just got to make it, even if you use seasons, add 2 exclamation marks, right? Just make it a little hard, right? And there's nothing stopping you picking up the phone and reconfirming a particular email you've got or a change of bank instructions you've got. And think about yourself as a trusted payer or a trusted payee. Is the person you're making to somebody you can trust, right? There are too many folks out there trying to take advantage of the situation. Simple stuff. Keeping your software up to date. Installing malware, installing VM malware, which protects you from cyber, is such a critical thing. Very simple things which you can do to kind of really take care of this situation.
And just to loop back, all of these things, you mentioned Barclays Eagles, the programs you have with startups, the programs you have with businesses, the education stuff, it's on the website. And people always loathe, obviously, I don't know what it is, but we sometimes think, oh, big bank website, no, I'm not going to look. But actually, like you said, with your webinars, there are a treasure trove of insights and information to really understand how they can help your business. Yeah,
absolutely, Valpesh.
Let's move into Brexit. And again, let's talk about business. Obviously, a massive bank like yours, and we've got you as a CEO who has those insights. What would you advise businesses? We've talked about consumers, but what would you advise businesses on the payment front? You have answered that to some extent, but in terms specifically of Brexit, what are the things you're seeing they're lagging on and they need more advice, or you want to flash in front of them and say, listen, guys, trust me on this. This is what you should be looking at and doing.
So, Alpesh, isn't it incredible? Isn't it? If up to March 7th, 8th of last year, all we would have talked about would be Brexit, right? Suddenly, 8th of March, 10th of March, you choose the date to today. I mean, frankly, Brexit has kind of faded into the background. Now, I have no desire to get into good, bad, or ugly. It is what it is, and we've got to get ready for it, right? And as a bank, that's exactly what we did. We got ready for it. We reorganized. We are now the largest bank in Ireland with Dublin as a headquarters and stuff like that. Look, I think whether it is large corporates or whether it is small businesses, they've got to look at how they reorganize their operations to take care of this. So for, one simple thing, for example, is payments, right? Because now EU is not one region and UK is separate from the EU, the rates of interchange change. So if earlier on you were sitting in the UK and selling something into Europe, the amount that would be cut is different today and more today than it was earlier. So how do big companies think about this, and how do they rearrange their payment kind of things? Obviously, this is going to be balanced off. This is not the only thing. It's balanced off by other elements of legal entity structuring, tax, governance matters, and stuff like that. I think for government, for small businesses, it's about just learning as to what the new rules and regulations are. And at any point when you're trying to institute so many new rules and regulations, there will be roadblocks. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And if you watch TV enough, you see enough of these roadblocks. Once again, it's a matter of education. Again, it's a matter of just saying, hey, what applies to me, and how am I going to kind of deal with it? Again, we are trying to put out as many webinars as we can, as many Q&A sessions as we can. Small businesses can talk to their relationship managers to help. And, this has also got issues for, British folks, for example, living in other parts of the world, where it's become far more difficult to do their banking now because of the rules and regulations of host countries. So it's best to have the conversation and see what works for you in your particular circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. And look, you're obviously a traditional bank going back a couple of 100 years. When we see, a lot of the audience, they'll be younger, of course, they'll be your future customers and so on. When we look at the challenger banks, the Starlings or the Revoluts, and you look at, say, the alternative banks like Oak North, do you see yourself becoming into that mold? So people say Barclays, fintech, innovative, because those might not be the words that come to mind at the moment, obviously, because you've got a great heritage and tradition. But are you leading the charge for that level of innovation? And what is that vision? What's the future Barclays going to look like in, say, 3 years?
So, Alpesh, Barclays is 328 years old. Okay. By the way, we are older than the Bank of England. By the way, the United States, the country, feels like a teenager because they're only about 200 years old, right? We have seen the plague. We've seen Industrial Revolution. We've seen the Agricultural Revolution. We've seen World War I. We've seen World War II. We've seen Bretton Woods. We've seen the airplane industry take off. We've seen man land on moon. I would submit to you that change is built into our DNA. We've been changing for the last 328 years. There's no reason why we can't change now. If there's anybody who's got experience with change, it is us. I rest my case, Alpesh.
Thank you.
We will continue to change.
And you've got that, that global experience as well. I know you yourself, because it's going to have to come from you because you're leading that part of the organization. And I'm looking at the questions as well, and there's quite a few. I might come back again to crypto because there's quite a few, and that probably gives you an indication of what the public are interested in as well. Two other areas that I want to touch upon, because I know I had quite a few questions on this, both from TikTok, so it was the younger audience, which is jobs. It's a tough time out there, finance, financial services. What's your advice to somebody who might be wanting to look at Barclays either as a job, how do they stand out, or an internship or an apprenticeship? I know, of course, there's the HR department. I mean, do we say to them, go to the HR department? What's your advice to them for their CV, for the degree courses or otherwise, or getting an entry into Barclays if they haven't got a degree? What would you say to them if you're sitting opposite you now?
So, Alpesh, I would always, I would always tell youngsters, first thing and most important thing is utilize the time when you're just out of college, just out of university or whatever, to find what you're really, truly passionate about. I don't expect you at 21, 22, 23 to really know what you're passionate about. But what I would really expect you to do is spend the next 3, 4, 5 years understanding what you're passionate about. Otherwise, and you are an extremely hardworking person. You cannot excel if you're not truly passionate, right? And I would always recommend to read, there's this book called Jonathan Living Seagull, right? It's just a few pages, but it really talks about this seagull who's got this passion to fly higher and faster than anybody else. You must read that book, right? It is such a great book.
Just give me the title again because it broke up. Just give me the title again.
Seagull, by Jonathan Livingston. Brilliant book, right? Finding your passion in life. Once you find your passion in life, then the questions, things like what is work, what is play, all those kind of things just disappear, right? Because that in itself becomes what you want. Now, it's evident that certain things like, digital skills, and digital skills, even for people who go in the arts, data visualization is going to be a brilliant area going forward. Build the skills that will take you to the future, right? What are the kind of things that take you to the future? And things like data visualization, analytics, design, things that, when I was at least growing up, did not even exist. Today are becoming so important. If you can find your passion, equip it with the skills. Also remember, when I was growing up, you could study 25 years in your life, work for the next 40 years, 45 years, and then retire. That model is gone. today's education system has to be about learning how to learn.
Yeah.
Learning how to learn, because you will have to learn for the next 50 years of your life, right? So learn how to learn, find your passion, continue learning, and you'll be great.
Yeah. No, I think that's, look, coming from you, that carries so much more weight because you're already in the bank. You're the one and the people working under you who decide who you're looking for. And I think very often the people I speak to, they don't have that confidence of knowledge because obviously there's social division in society. Speaking of which, when we look at, say, let's start with UK India, because we're guests of British Asian Trust and the amount of work they do under the auspices of the Prince of Wales to bridge those gaps, to have social mobility. Let me start off with first asking you, because the Prime Minister was supposed to be going to India, but because of COVID, he couldn't. How do you see the Indian market growing? How do you see UK-India relations now that the UK government has this pivot towards India? And what are Barclays' plans from where you're sitting for the Indian market?
So Alpesh, obviously the India, UK go back a long time, very, very long time. And the work, the kind of work that you're doing, Alpesh, really to promote trade between India at a very high level, the kind of political connections that you're creating, the UK-India Business Council, all the great work that you're doing. And of course, both the countries are kind of working on. We are very, very natural partners. We are very natural kind of allies. When I was growing up, I was always told every NRI worth his salt has 1 foot in England, right? And therefore, there's a very natural, and we people like you and I should fuel this because we are beneficiaries of this, and giving back towards this is so important. That's why the work the British Asian Trust does is so amazing, particularly at the time of this pandemic. Like I said right in the beginning, this pandemic has forced a lot of people to think about things differently, including giving back, including how grateful we are for the houses that we have, where we can actually cocoon ourselves, right? And think about everybody who doesn't have that ability. Along with the British Asian Trust, and you referred to it, I'm a trustee for Pratham, right? And Pratham, again, phenomenal work on the ground, teaching people. Imagine they having to go digital to kids who don't have digital capabilities. So teaching classes on the radio. Alpesh, human ingenuity again.
Yeah.
How do you take classes and teach them on the radio? It's like incredible. This is something we should think about and say, in our own way, what are we going to give back? And British Asian Trust is a great route. It's managed exceptionally well. So either through them, through others, if you give back to Pratham, obviously, I would be delighted. But you choose your route. But think about how grateful you should be for where you are. Count your blessings and somebody else an opportunity.
And there's this important role that I know financiers like Barclays have, because with British Asian Trust, when they've introduced their very innovative impact bond, and obviously there's this whole story around ESG, which I'm sure will be incredibly important to you. But I guess, and CSR, as I guess it used to be called, how do you see that playing out for Barclays as a bank? You've got focus on the bottom line, you've got shareholders, who want their returns, and then you've got this ESG. Where is that a distraction? Is it something which helps the share price, do you think, and gives those returns? And so you're not distracted away. Where does that fit in for you?
See, Alpesh, a lot of people try and position this as this versus this. And I think that's fundamentally the wrong thing to do. And I'll tell you why. I've become a so strong supporter and a believer that every company, not just a bank, of course Barclays, but every company must have a societal purpose. And that is not CSR, Alpesh. Why is it not CSR? Because when we say society, what do we really mean? When I say society, I mean customers plus prospects. Everybody who's a customer of mine in the UK or is a prospect of mine in the UK put together their society. So for me to be doing something that solves a societal problem has to be part of my business model. If it's not part of my business model, I cannot win, right? Now, Alpesh, you would know there's no way anybody can accuse Apple of having products which are cheap, right? If anything, Apple products are pretty incredibly expensive, right? But why is it that people don't hesitate to pay that price? Because Apple made technology intuitive. Alpesh, you tell me, why is it that you can buy an Apple product and don't have to charge it, while you can buy a Sony, a Samsung, an LNG, or whatever, and the first thing you got to do is charge it? Why? Right? Those are the kind of things where if your societal purpose is to make technology intuitive, see the rewards it gets you. How do you kind of think about every company? What is your societal purpose? In our case, it's very, very, very clear. Money is a means to something or the other, right? Alpesh, you are a very, very well-known person. You're an OBE, you're dealing with politicians, all that kind of good stuff, you know, exceptional schools, all of that stuff. All of that costs money, right? You had to learn how to network, you went to brilliant colleges, schools, all that costs money. You have certain hopes and aspirations. I have certain hopes and aspirations. Maybe all I want to do is get my daughter through a good college, right? Our hopes and aspirations may differ, but giving us the confidence that we can meet our hopes and aspirations is our role in society. That yes, we are there with you, help you through this journey, that you have the money to help you meet your hopes and aspirations. And how do we kind of guide you along? Really fundamentally important.
And that's phenomenally inspiring. So we've got to meet you halfway. We've got to take the step and say, right, this is what I want from my bank. This is what you're offering. I'm going to actually look. We're not entitled to any of the things you've mentioned. But speaking of hopes and aspirations, again, let's stick with that broader theme then. There's been reports on ethnic representations at the top boards of FTSE companies. Okay, you know that there's people of ethnic minorities heading up Adobe, Microsoft, Pepsi, Google, some of the biggest, greatest companies in the world. Microsoft is now worth more than the entire FTSE 100, right? Why are we still not seeing ethnic minority representation right at the top of FTSE 100 companies? The talent's there, hint, hint, my good friend, the talent's there. What's the blockage in Britain that doesn't seem to exist in America?
So Alpesh, I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but I think we've made progress, right? I think we've made progress. Whether it is from a gender perspective or whether it's from an ethnicity perspective, clearly we've made progress. We should bring in our friends from Green Park. They're always doing these studies, and they're very, very good at it. Look, I think fundamentally what we've got to realize, if we truly want to be, at least the way I think about it, if I truly want to understand what my customers want, my colleague base has to be a reflection of my customer base, right? How will I understand my customer base if my colleagues are not representative of that? And therefore, getting proportional representation in colleague base is a business essential. If you don't do that, you're dead. So what I worry about more than this, Alpesh, is that we do a lot of recruitment in the name of diversity, right? We do a lot of recruitment in the name of diversity, but then having recruited, we never ever pay attention to making sure that they're kind of been given a place and feel comfortable enough to survive in that place, right? Sorry, Alpesh, I'm going to make a plug for one more.
Ooh, please.
Don't even read the book. Just watch the video. If you can just go to YouTube and Google the giraffe and the elephant, right?
Okay.
And it is 4 or 5 minutes. The giraffe and the elephant. It brings home diversity so beautifully. And I would strongly recommend that the viewers of this show, Alpesh, you're very busy, but if you can spare 5 minutes, please do have a look at the giraffe and the elephant.
My friend, when it comes from CEOs of banks, people who've got a proven track record like your good self, trust me, I listen, I make the time, I'm learning. And it's like you said, and it's the advice you gave, which I want to repeat to people. It's that ability to learn how to learn, which is important. Let me stick with that though. Let's stick. What are some of the life-changing books or videos, I guess we'd say now, or podcasts? Give us some quick fire things people should be reading, listening to, people they should be reading, listening to, because I think, people love that kind of takeaway. I know I will. So,
Yeah.
what are things which have helped you and you'd advise others to focus on?
So the list is extremely long, Alpesh, but I'll tell you the most recent one, which really, really struck me. There's an incredible book called The Courage to be Disliked. The Courage to be Disliked is by a Japanese philosopher. It's available on Amazon. Available on Amazon in the UK. By the way, it's not available on Amazon in India. It's a white colored kind of cover with green Japanese letterings. Alpesh, this is a book that made me question a lot of my beliefs. As I was, all through my years. And fundamentally, I mean, there's so many lessons in the book, but what took me away is a lot of us blame our past circumstances for the way we are today and how we do. And he basically calls time on that. And he said, you're fundamentally wrong, right? You cannot do that. That's a wrong way of thinking about it. There's a different way of thinking about it. This book has changed a lot of my thinking. I would strongly recommend it. By the way, it's not an easy book to read. It is not an easy book to read, but I would still recommend stay with it, try and read it. From a business perspective, Alpesh, one of the most defining books I've read is Clayton Christensen. He's the tenured professor at Harvard, the poor man. We lost him about a year ago. And he talks about this theory of job to be done, right? And, Alpesh, is a very interesting theory. He says, so you get up in the morning, you choose which newspapers you want to read or which TV news show you want to choose, right? You choose because that particular newspaper is doing a job for you, right? You have chosen that newspaper to do that job for you, right? So you may choose a TV news which specializes on business news versus political news, right? Because the job is you want the business news. There's another beautiful example he gives about how they helped a fast food chain grow milkshakes. And typically you get an MBA and you say, make the milkshake thicker, make it, a little more watery, liquid, change the flavors. And he said, no, what is the job the milkshake is doing? And after a lot of study, they said in the morning, this is the US, the job the milkshake is doing is actually giving a guy who's driving 45 minutes to work something that they can consume in the car, and it's not something that is messy like a donut or a banana or something like that. Something that keeps you full till about 11:30, 12 in the morning, right? And easy to pick up and go. At 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening, the job of the milkshake changes. It's really about kids who are with their parents. And the parents are feeling guilty because the kid is demanding a Coke or a Pepsi or something like that. They want to give something healthy to the kid, so they choose a milkshake, right? And therefore, the job the milkshake does in the morning is very different from the job the milkshake does in the evening. How do you think about the job to be done? And if you can crack the job to be done, your business will roar.
Well,
right?
Let me on that point then ask you two questions. We're running out of time. One is, Apple, they used to see themselves as a company which made computers, and then you look at Steve Jobs's last few speeches before he passed away, and they were a company whose job to be done was to make people happier. That's the way they looked at it. So they had this, this evangelist around them. What's Barclays' job to be done in that context? And also, more importantly, you as an individual have had immense success in your career. You're obviously doing a lot of things right. People want to emulate you. They're inspired by you, as I am. What traits allowed you to do the job you had to get done, that we can learn from, which help people get ahead in life?
So I think, at least from a Barclays perspective, it's exactly what I mentioned before, right? It's about truly helping people, being their partner in meeting their hopes and aspirations. Whether those hopes and aspirations are for, Alpesh, that may be for your business, that may be because you're a governor, that may be as a father, right? You have different hopes and aspirations for all three. Money is involved in all three. How do we become your hope and aspiration as you kind of go along, right? Personally, Alpesh, look, I fully realize I've been lucky. I've been very, very lucky. It's not, I mean, it's impossible to kind of say that I'll live in so many parts of the world and this would happen. If there's one person, whatever I am today, good, bad, ugly, if you like me, if you hate me, the one person you can kind of give credit to is my mother. I would have never got here without her. She was a lady far, far, far ahead of her times. And the way she pushed me, Alpesh, was amazing. She constantly, up to her dying day, thought that I was not educated enough. This is despite having done 2 postgraduate degrees from India. But she said, what is the point? You haven't published papers. You haven't shared, all your learnings. So I guess I let her down in that respect. But, what I've realized is, if by sharing what I've gone through, even if it helps one person, just one person, that's a big deal, right? That's my life made worth.
Yeah.
And therefore, all of us should think about how we're going to give back, right? How do you keep learning? How do you give back? And I think that is what is driving me. I just need to help one person.
And through obviously the power of Barclays and the stuff you're publishing there to help businesses, but also through this and what you've just said, that makes an impact. And we really thank you for it. One last question before I do a proper thank you. Bullishness on the UK economy. What's your projection, both for the UK and the world economy? A lot of business people watching, a lot of youngsters watching, entering the jobs market. What's your view?
So, Alpesh, the first thing I'd like to say is, obviously, we're starting from a low point. As you know, whether it was India, whether it was the UK, whether it was US, last year, GDP was down, unheard of, right? I mean, it makes the global financial crisis feel like a walk in the park, the amount of GDP down. 2, unreal government intervention. The amount of money the governments collectively have pumped into the economy, completely off the charts, right? Number 3, just no opportunity for consumer spending. And, I've heard of numbers like 154 trillion of consumer savings around the world, right? All of these things should point to a very strong economy recovery. Now, not lost upon me, and I don't think should be lost upon anybody. The pandemic is not over, right? And anybody watching the news in India, it is scary. It is really scary. We cannot make the mistake of saying everything is behind us. We've got to continue to be extremely careful. I believe in human ingenuity. I believe we'll overcome, but that doesn't mean we do stupid things. We've got to be really, really careful. If we are careful, if we are sensible, I think it should be an incredible growth in all economies. Maybe, the US kind of already roaring ahead. The UK very well poised to roar ahead. And then, countries, as they kind of deal with this whole pandemic, should start seeing a lot of growth.
Ashok, thank you so much to end on that note as well, which is a note of optimism and the faith, where we started with in ingenuity, but also just thank you for your personal friendship and also being at the head of such an important organization, because not just in terms of the work that you do, when we think about, you mentioned British Asian Trust, I'm going to hand over to Hitan in a second. Pratham, there's lend a hand. I couldn't get to Harin Thakker's question on that, what you do in terms of building up the economy. I know you've got this vision as well of going well beyond just the job to be done, but actually uplifting society. And that's critical to have people like you at the top with that vision and that view, because that's what uplifts not just the companies and their stock prices, but actually nations as well. So really want to give a heartfelt thank you for all of that and being so generous with your time and sharing all of this with everyone, because you know, it is invaluable, and we'll make sure we broadcast it over again and again as well. So thank you for all of that. It's been absolutely my privilege to ask you these questions. I'm going to hand over now to Hiten from British Asian Trust, who's going to talk again about the amazing initiatives that they've got going on. Thank you once again, Ashok.
Thank you so much to Ashok for those incredible insights, talking about digital inflection point that we're at, the digitizing of commerce being such an important part of what our future economy looks like. And then equally, talking about the idea of keep on learning and keep on giving back at the same time as well. And that idea of giving back, as I mentioned at the start, the British Asian Trust, we're right in the middle of our UK aid match appeal with the British government. So any donations to the trust to support those in South Asia recovering or dealing with the pandemic at this time will be doubled by them for any donations till the 31st of May. On that note, please do look out for our future BAT Insights events and our rolling program that we have. And if there's anything at all you'd like to suggest for one of these sessions, please do let us know. Thank you again to Ashok and of course to Alpesh for facilitating this discussion so much. Wishing you all a great afternoon. Thank you again.